Okay, so in this video we're going to go through cosine, and you can fast forward kind of through it if you want to see what the process ends up going through if you think you got it. But I'm going to kind of reiterate what was happening here is I want to, let me do cosine here. So once again, if I actually take an angle and double it, that's the same as taking the same angle and adding it together. Okay? Two of the same angle is the same as doubling. So what I do is I manipulate this guy to be cosine of the same angle added together. So now that's actually our cosine addition formula. So I break that up and I set it up as cosine of alpha, sine of alpha minus, nope, I made a mistake, cosine of alpha, right? So I take this one from here and this one from here, right? And I plug them in my formula. And then I have sine of alpha. I don't know why I'm doing that. It's because I'm on like 3 hours of sleep here. Sine of alpha. Okay? So what's cosine times cosine? Well, cosine times cosine is cosine squared alpha. And what's sine times sine? Sine squared alpha. Can't go any further than this. And some of you are going to say, well, isn't that equal to 1? The reason it's not equal to 1, for that identity to work, this has to be a plus and it's minus. So they are different. And so this is the same as cosine to alpha. Okay? So I'm going to have, so this is your check to make sure that you did that one right. So hopefully you tried that one on your own and then watch the video to see what was happening. Now what I'm going to do is we can actually come up with other versions for the cosine formula. So this one works and we can use this. This is great and a lot of you will remember this. Some of these formulas I'll give to you. We'll talk about that when I'm back in class. How can I, yeah, it says fun. I know this is fun for you guys. But basically, how can I manipulate that cosine formula? And that's what this says. So we know we have our base one, okay? So our base one is, I'm going to change the thickness here so it sticks out a little bit more, hopefully. So our basic cosine one that we come up with is cosine squared alpha minus sine squared alpha. So how can I come up with the other identities? Okay, so here's what I know. And I'm going to use one of these Pythagorean identities that we've seen in the past. I know sine squared alpha plus cosine squared alpha is equal to 1. Okay, so how can I use that? So let's say you're given a problem and sine is the only thing that you have. Well, I can use these two guys together and do some substitution to manipulate. Now, I don't have to use these other ones, but we're going to derive them, okay? If you only know the one that we start with, that'll work for you. But basically, I can manipulate this guy. And so I'm going to manipulate it by taking sine squared alpha plus cosine squared alpha is equal to 1. I'm going to take this guy and move it to the other side. So sine squared alpha is the same as 1 minus cosine squared alpha. Algebraically, it's the same as me saying if I had x plus y is equal to 1, we can get it into slope-intercept form by subtracting the x to the other side. So it's no different than what you've done in your algebra classes, and it's very easy for you to get what I did here. So now that I know sine squared alpha is equal to 1 minus cosine squared, I can take this guy and substitute it in. And this will create a whole nother equation with just cosine in it. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to go ahead and move this up. Okay. Let's see if I can erase that. I can't erase that. Okay. So I have cosine squared alpha minus sine squared alpha. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace the sine squared, and make sure you put it in parentheses, 1 minus cosine squared alpha. What does it turn into? Well, let's just kind of go through the algebraic process. Minus a 1, right, I'm going to distribute, plus cosine squared alpha. I have two like terms, and so I have 2 cosine squared alpha minus 1. I have just created a new cosine formula. So now I can use this, or once again, we're going to chalk this up to lack of sleep. Both would give me the same information. Okay? Both would give me the same information. And we're going to start again with our original double angle formula for cosine. And we're going to use this to manipulate. Okay, but now what I want to do is I want to get rid of cosine. So in order to get rid of cosine, I'm going to take sine squared and move it over. So that's the same as cosine squared is equal to 1 minus sine squared alpha. That's an equal sign. So I'm going to take this guy right here, and I'm going to plug it in right here. So that's going to be replaced with 1 minus sine squared alpha minus sine squared alpha. There's no distribution here, so it's straightforward. I still put parentheses just to make sure, you know, I'm good and I don't have to distribute anything. I have 2 negative sine squared, so I have 1 minus 2 sine squared alpha. And so all of these guys are equal to each other. And these are the identities for a double angle for cosine. So the idea is, what happens to the trig value if I double it? How do I get that? I use these formulas. So I'll have a couple examples. We'll go through that, and you guys will have time to work on some homework, and then when we regroup, we'll make sure we got this stuff down.